beautiful. I was about to say, what a beautiful day. It's not. It is so hot outside. Hey, what's up, garden friends? Jeff here. How's everybody doing? We're doing well. I'm great. It's that time of year. Questions are starting to flood in about the hibiscus plants. Basic care for potted tropical hibiscus plants. Mainly going over when's knocking stuff off the table. So sorry about the background noise. Main questions I get are questions like, should I repot them? When should I repot them? How to repot them? What kind of watering? Sunlight in various climates. It hasn't been windy, like right until I hit record, and now it's just pure chaos out here. Watering, fertilizing. Why did they stop flowering? That's a really common one. A lot of people get these and they stop flowering for them. Whether or not to deadhead them, that's another big one. Get a lot of questions about deadheading them and more. I'm just gonna go through it all. Gonna be rattling things off here pretty quickly because it's warm and the camera likes to overheat when it's warm. So for starters, hibiscus, Rosa sinensis, the tropical variety, generally have a pretty good reputation for being a fairly easy to grow plant as a potted plant. Again, I'm not talking about if you live someplace where you can grow these as a perennial. In a container, sometimes things can be a little bit different and there's just more variables to keep in mind when it comes to growing them. For the most part, these hibiscus like full sun, depending on your climate. They like an ample amount of moisture, not necessarily to be sitting in water like some of the other varieties that you can grow like in a pond. Organically rich soil, very important. It's going to help them have nice green, lush, sturdy growth and helps to keep them flowering profusely. So when you pick up your hibiscus, when I get a hibiscus, one of the first things I like to do is have a nice feel of the pot. See if it's really firm, maybe even go ahead and pull it up if it feels firm and see what's going on with those roots. It's usually a good idea to go ahead and just repot them as soon as you get them, assuming temperatures and things are good enough for them. If you pick them up in the very early spring and you maybe need to still move it in and out of the house for a few weeks until you're free of frost or until the heat rolls in, which they like, these things really like a lot of heat, then you could perhaps hold off until you've moved into the growing season. Growing season meaning that you're having consistently warm temperatures for them and a good amount of sunlight, minimum 6 to 8 hours a day. These plants are just classically root bound, or I don't know if root bound is necessarily the right word because they tend to have a pretty fibrous root, which don't always root bound quite the same as some other plants do. But typically when you pick one up from the nursery, it's ready for a repot. So take it home, organically rich soil. I like to just use a blend of an all-purpose potting mix that I cut with a more expensive blend. Maybe throw a handful of compost in there. It needs to drain well. And again, don't let them sit in water, at least not for a really long time. Sometimes you need to water them from the bottom to bring them back to life. They will let you know when they're thirsty. These things wilt down very, very, very quickly. If I don't repot a hibiscus that I brought home from the store, then I will probably have to water them 2, maybe 3 times a day during the summer when we're over 90 degrees. They just don't like those temperatures if they don't have consistently moist soil. Also typically thought of as a plant for the full sun, and that is true. The more warm and dry the climate, the more afternoon shade they should probably get. In coastal areas, you can get away with a lot more sun, full sun. They love the full sun. I've never had an issue with growing hibiscus where they're getting afternoon shade as long as they're getting that minimum of about 6 to 8 hours of bright, direct morning sun. Consistently moist, maybe an overly used term when it comes to growing plants, but man, it is true. Like I said, they'll let you know when they're starting to dry out. Give them plenty of water. Anytime a plant, especially a hibiscus, goes from being moist to dry, hydrated to dehydrated, that's a reduction in growth that you're going to have. It's stress on the plant, and you'll tend to have a lot of leaf drop when that happens too, and you're going to have a much slower production of flower buds. So again, keep them moist. Don't know how many times I've said it, probably too many, but it's important. Don't let them dry out for too terribly long. And then, very popular question, why do they stop blooming? There can actually be a lot of reasons that they'll stop blooming for you. Something to keep in mind when you bring home one of these hibiscus from a big box store is that they were likely treated with some sort of hormone to put them into bloom for when they go out to the nursery. So it's typical to bring one home and have it flower and flower and flower and then just stop. It's also part of their natural flowering cycle. Hibiscus will bloom throughout the year given that they have proper conditions, meaning moisture and sunlight and nutrient, right? The right minerals are down there around the roots for the plant, but they tend to put on a show and then rest. And then they put on a show and then they rest. A lot of energy goes into flowering. This standardized hibiscus right here, this seminal pink, it has around 20, 24 flowers on it right now and lots of buds. So I expect this to put on a show for probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. and then probably not going to get much out of it for maybe 2 to 3 weeks after that, and then it'll put on another show of flowers. And usually they'll still flower sporadically in between. Like this one down here, it's one of the trade wind type hibiscus. I think it's called Mandarin Breeze, but I don't remember for sure. See, that's a second day flower on it, starting to curl up. It's ready to fall off of the plant. But this one, it just had a big show, and now it's starting to go into more of a resting phase. But there's still some buds in there. It's still going to do some flowering over the next couple weeks before it puts on another big show. I suppose a better example would have been this other seminal pink hibiscus shrub over here that has no flowers on it, where it just finished a very heavy bloom set, and it's getting ready to go into another one. You can see it just has some random little buds coming up on it, so it'll flower sporadically for the next few weeks, but not nothing like that. That's pretty extreme over there. Another example over here, this one I don't have a variety name on it, but it was just blooming like insanity, just like that pink one that y'all saw, and it's starting to fizzle out of there. Still lots of buds, but it's going to take a rest. It's so tall you can't even see the flowers. I don't talk about hibiscus. Might want to see how pretty some of them are. This one is a good example of one where I was having to water it 2-3 times a day when it was in the mid 80s. It wasn't even that hot outside. And then popped it into a new container, and that hasn't been an issue since. Watering about every other day now. That's with very heavy drinks. I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get out of there. Don't trample the flowers. What's wrong with you? If you notice that the flowers are shrinking, that's probably just a response to temperature. Cooler temperatures usually got much smaller flowers on the plant. If they're starting to set flower, they're starting to make nice big buds, but then they're yellowing and falling off and they're not holding onto those flowers, that's normally an issue with consistency when it comes to the plant's moisture or temperatures or fertilizer. Perhaps they were over fertilized and there's an excess of something throwing them off. Maybe they just need to be repotted and put into a fresh mix of soil. They're not able to get the water and the nutrients that they need from whatever blend that they're in. Like I said, that's usually a stress response, meaning that there's something inconsistent going on. There's some sorts of ups and downs happening with the plant. Generally speaking, you don't need to deadhead your hibiscus. There are some exceptions. There are different varieties, or different, I guess you could call them varieties, yeah, within the Rosa sinensis, these tropical hibiscus, like the Cajun hibiscus, which usually have a more unruly, wild form to their growth habit and really big, gigantic, dramatic flowers on them. Sometimes those will hold on to their flowers and go into seed. And actually, I might have, let me see. These ones that are being sent out to the markets en masse, they have been bred and cultivated to flower and just flower and flower and flower. That's the selling point for the nurseries. Don't sell that well when it's just a green bush. They need to have the flowers on them. It's part of the appeal. So they will generally have a flower that ages out. I'm trying to find one to show y'all. I mean, you see what's going on here, right? This one, that's an older flower, so that's going to fizzle. It'll start to cup up. And then down here, it should start to yellow. The petals will fall off, and then that should fall off. Here's a yellow one up here, right there. The old base of the flower should fall off on its own. If they don't, if they stay green and they start to swell and get firm down here, and there'll be a ball that forms on the inside, that's a seed pod. So you would want to pull that off. It takes a lot of energy to flower and set seed. With this, I didn't really need to pull it off. I'm trying to find one, because every now and then they'll hold on to an old flower base, and oh, here's one down on the ground. Oh, nope, no, it's not, never mind. Every now and then they'll hold on to an old flower base, and that will start to form seed. And if that happens, you want to pull that up. But you see how easily these come off, these old bases? Typically a gentle breeze or just an extra day or two on the plant, those come off on their own. So you don't normally need to deadhead them, but if you want to, it's only going to help keep them flowering more profusely. So say, for example, this one right here, in a day or two that's going to fall off on its own. You can go ahead if you want to and snap it off on your own. I don't think it's necessary because, like I said, they typically will do that all by themselves. Those flowers, such beautiful plants. No wonder they're so popular, right? On the note of flowering and how to keep them looking good, can't talk about that without talking about fertilizer. Fertilizing hibiscus is a very important part of having nice, green, lush growth, sturdy stems, and an abundance of flowers. These are a plant where I don't recommend doing the 20-20-20, meaning an all-purpose fertilizer. Hibiscus tend to be more sensitive to high levels of phosphorus in their fertilizer. So it's good to find something this was pretty, but I think it's just not going to work out. They will do their best with a breakdown where you have a medium N, meaning the nitrogen, that's your first number, a very low middle number, that's your phosphorus, and a high potassium, that's the last number. So instead of 20, 20, 20, something that is like this where it goes 10, 4, 12, that's a pretty decent fertilizer as far as a continuous release goes. There's lots of good stuff in this one. I've been using this year. It's the first year I've used it. I'm really liking it. You've seen the hibiscus. They seem to like it. It has ingredients in it that hibiscus just love. Cottonseed meal, the bone meal, blood meal, iron, stuff for green growth, and lots of flower. Don't need much with a 10-gallon pot. They only want 3 tablespoons to be put in there at a time. These will last a fairly long time, and that's a very mild fertilizer. That's your continuous release. That's just to help keep the soil alive and happy, and to, you know, all the stuff I was talked about. A liquid feed is still a good idea that's going to have higher numbers. This Petunia feed from Jack's Classic has been fantastic with the hibiscus this year. 20 on the nitrogen, 6 down low, right? Got the low phosphorus and high potassium. Potassium is very important for hibiscus, and if the phosphorus is high up here, they have trouble absorbing the potassium. In fact, just high levels of phosphorus, period, can cause a lot of nutrient binding and affect the way nutrients are transported through the cells of the plants. While it's very popular and a lot of people love it, Super Bloom and fertilizers that are meant to just keep the flowers popping out like crazy, I would avoid them. Usually we'll end up with a lot of yellowing leaves because of nutrient binding and just poor transport, right? Poor flow within the plant to move nutrients around the way that they need to be. Doing something like this, just keeping the plant very, very healthy, will usually be all that you need to do to keep the plant flowering profusely. And you've seen it, right? That seminal pink back there, there's no super blooms being used on that. This is it. I'm using this. You would use this every 2 weeks. I use it in a continuous feed at a low dose, so it's more of a unique system where every time I water, the plant gets just a little bit of fertilizer. But most people would be using a watering can or a hose end sprayer where you just follow the manufacturer's direction. This one is higher on the nitrogen. That could be lower. I've had really good luck with it. There used to be a fertilizer, and Hidden Valley Hibiscus has a very good formula, and they have really good fertilizers, and I have always used those in the past. It's just this year, because I'm using a fertigation system where I'm keeping something inside of a chamber, so whenever I water through the hose, things are getting fertilized. It's easier for me to use this more as like an all-around great fertilizer for everything that I'm growing. This is even great for the palm trees. But if I were doing things with the hose and sprayer, I would go back to using my fertilizer from Hidden Valley Hibiscus. Great company. They used to have tons of hibiscus. It was my favorite place for hibiscus. They have since retired, but they still sell their fertilizers, I believe. So check out their website. This has been great. Again, the Nelson's right here, continuous release, that has also been very good. None of this is sponsored. These companies don't know me. Just letting you know, these are products I've been using for hibiscus, and they've been working very well. And to make sure I put it out there, avoid the Super Bloom fertilizers. It's, you know, sometimes okay to just like do it once and lower the dosage. Don't follow the directions, go easy with it. But I wouldn't do it more than that. I would really just try and keep the plant nice and healthy, make sure it's getting enough sun, and that it's not fluctuating between dry and moist and dry and moist. Try and keep it consistently moist. And that should be enough. A really healthy hibiscus should flower profusely for you. And then the last point about the Jack's feed that I forgot to make, one of the reasons that I like it so much is it says right here, see that? Great for hard water. So this has already been set up and formulated so that if you have hard water, it's going to help lower that pH, which is good because hibiscus are going to want things to be more on the acidic side. And proper pH level is important. If you have really alkaline conditions, then there's going to be nutrient binding and the plant's just not going to function as it needs to have nice green foliage and sturdy stems and to produce buds and hold those buds and produce flowers. And when it comes to pests, there were some of these flowers. I think that they've all fallen off at this point. Main things I deal with the tropical hibiscus are usually ants and aphids, sometimes whitefly, and that usually just means they're not getting enough sun. When I move them to more sun, that usually handles that issue. To me, ants and aphids are just kind of part of growing hibiscus, and I just blast the aphids off with high pressure water. The ants and the aphids can have a relationship together where the ants will use the aphids to help loosen up the plant. They can bite into the plant and they release their honeydew and their sap, and then the ants will harvest that. So they kind of farm them. It's a neat process, but it can get out of control. I would never spray a hibiscus with pretty much anything, at least not while it's in active growth and flowering, because pretty much anything you hit these flowers with could affect the pollinators, butterflies and hummingbirds, and well, all different types of pollinators, moths. They absolutely love hibiscus. So even neem, those things, I wouldn't use it, but perhaps a mild soapy solution, if you want to spray the plant down and blast it off, rinse it very, very heavily, and pull the flowers off when you do that, then that might be an option. Typically, if the plant's really healthy, then you shouldn't really have to worry about the pests taking over the plant and hurting the plant. But hey, stuff happens, pests happen. If that is the situation and it's getting out of control, I would just take them out to the yard or to the driveway, someplace that's away from everything else, and just blast the bugs off with high pressure water. That's probably the best way to go as far as keeping things nice and safe and happy for the pollinators and wildlife that are going to want to enjoy the plant. Oh, scale. Scale can be an issue. That is something that is going to need to probably be removed by hand using a Q-tip and some rubbing alcohol and going in and dabbing them off. I don't know. There's even a type of scale that I've had to deal with once. It's not very common. I believe it was called snow scale. They're just teeny tiny little white dots on the bark of the plant that are very hard to notice when they first show up, and then all of a sudden there are too many of them. With snow scale, it's usually recommended to just get rid of the plant. And I spent a full growing season last year trying to get it off of the plant using various treatments. I kept it in my driveway where I didn't have to worry about overspray or anything like that. Made sure that no flowers were produced so that the pollinators would stay safe, and there was just nothing really worked to get rid of the snow scale, so just got rid of the plant. So like I said, it's what's usually recommended, but snow scale is not something you're probably going to have to deal with because it's not very common. So uncommon that's probably not even worth talking about. Hopefully it stays that way, right? Don't want that to become a huge problem, because people are gonna have to start burning their stock if that happens, like with the pink mealybugs. Anyways, hey, there it is. That's about everything I can think of that needs to be talked about based off of the questions that I get with them. Just to recap, hibiscus, they like consistent moisture. Repot them when you pick them up and put them someplace where they're going to get bright, direct morning sun, afternoon shade if you live in a very hot and dry climate. Otherwise, full sun is usually okay for the majority of the day. Don't let them dry out and then get moist and dry out and get moist. Try and keep something consistent going with them. And fertilize with a fertilizer that has the ratios and everything set up for hibiscus specifically. It really does make a big difference. I'm not one to boast about needing fertilizers made specifically for specific plants, with the exception of like using tomato fertilizers on cactus and succulents. They enjoy those things, and palms need some extra things, but broadly, most tropicals and house plants and all-purpose is usually fine. But with hibiscus, you will notice a difference if you use a fertilizer that's actually formulated for them. If you don't like the liquid feed type fertilizers, should have talked about this when I was talking about fertilizers, you can just incorporate some bone meal and some seaweed extract, kelp, those sorts of things, fish fertilizers. The emulsified fish stuff smells terrible, but the hibiscus love it. They like lots of organics down in their mix and fertilize them fairly frequently at a low dose, and it will reward you. It will reward you abundantly. Okay, that was probably far too long for talking about hibiscus, but wanted to keep everything covered and be thorough. Hope everybody's doing well. Comment down below, say hi. I love talking to everybody. Tips, tricks, suggestions, always appreciated. Anything that I've missed, go ahead, please, and let everybody know. The comment section's a great place to look for more tips and tricks about growing the plants. And of course, as always, and most importantly, everybody, keep on growing. Bye.